That's the only reason, I think, at least for me, the only reason I write is that feeling of like we just hit it. Like suddenly you're in flow state. Suddenly it's all like, it's not hard anymore. Because if it was hard, everybody would do it. And the problem with writing is that everybody thinks they can do it because everybody writes over the course of a day. I sent this email, I wrote this thing, I sent a report or whatever. Like my fingers are on a keyboard, I think I can write. Nobody's like, I just think I can draw. I think I can sculpt. I think I'm gonna write this song. Like that is not, nobody comes easily to that stuff because they don't ordinarily do that stuff.
So I'm curious, I'm just going to ask you a couple simple questions, probably not with the most simple answer though, but what is the best part about being a writer?
The knee-jerk reaction is to say having written. Mm-hmm. You know, the feeling for me, it's the very beginning of like, what could this be? And then it's the very end of, I know exactly what it is. I just have to race to get to the end of it. You know, like it's the downhill. It's the like, I'm not climbing anymore. I'm not like, it's not hard anymore. It's, I know what it is. And when that happens, whether anybody else ever reads it, but once you're just on the downhill, once you're in the slalom, once the sort of wind of story is rushing through your hair and everything makes sense and, your cheeks are a little blistered by the snow, like that's the only reason, I think, at least for me, the only reason I write is that feeling of like, we just hit it. Like suddenly you're in flow state. Suddenly it's all like, it's not hard anymore.
Yeah.
Because if it was hard, everybody would do it. And the problem with writing is that everybody thinks they can do it because everybody writes over the course of a day. I sent this email, I wrote this thing, I sent a report or whatever. Like my fingers are on a keyboard, I think I can write. Nobody's like, I just think I can draw. I think I can sculpt. I think I'm gonna write this song. Like that is not, nobody comes easily to that stuff because they don't ordinarily do that stuff.
Okay. And along with that, what makes a good storyteller then? If people like, they all think that they could write, but what really truly separates those people who write and then those people who can tell a story?
The ability to synthesize pain, which is why I think ultimately AI cannot do this work. Because as somebody, on the picket line had the greatest sign that says AI never had its heart broken at 14.
That's great.
So it's the capacity that we have to turn pain into pleasure and to turn specific pain into universal pain that doesn't have to hurt anymore. Like we're all a bit broken and that's fine. And it's that break that allows us to understand other people because everybody's broken in their own specific way. So how do you specify the general? How do you generalize the specific? I think is part of what makes writers write and part of what makes it good. And so from that pain comes the desire to share that pain and to learn from that pain and to bond through that pain. And if there isn't that animating instance in it, and even the reflexiveness is like, listen, I got hurt when I was a kid. I want to feel good. I'm going to write a fucking feel good thing. It's the emotional desire to transfer an emotional state to somebody else. Is what makes a writer a writer. And that's what makes a good story.
And what is your writing process like? Do you still would you write pen and on a paper pad first, or do you just go right to the computer and start writing? Take us through like a typical day. You wake up, and what is your process like? Do you have a daily routine that you have to go through in the morning first before you sit down to write? I'm just always curious by how people work because it's always different.
It burns incense.
Yeah, I burn incense. I do not do pen to paper anymore.
Okay.
I used to more. I think maybe it was when I had more free time and I'd like find myself like in the world. And so I'd carry a journal in my backpack and, have a pen with it. And if an idea occurred to me, I'd jot it down. But now things are so much more deadline oriented. Like the time for wool gathering has passed. But it's almost always like a lot of procrastination. I'm an adherent to the school of procrastination, which is don't write until you can't not write.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's perfect. No, I know exactly what you're saying, man.
You know, like, and some of it is by design that, like, you know, stories are like grapes and they need time to ferment before you can squeeze them. And so there's some stories that you can, you know, it's fine, whatever, it's grape juice and it's supposed to be grape juice and that's okay. And there's some stories that need decades to just kind of work their way through your subconscious and discover what it's supposed to be. Like I had this story problem I needed to solve last week. That I like set aside time, like, all right, I got to figure out this third act. I don't know what it is. But I know that I need it. And then I went on a work trip and I was like, oh, it's okay. I'll have some time in the middle there. The problem did not solve itself until halfway through the flight home.
Ooh.
You know, but it just fell into place. Like suddenly it was like, perfect. Oh, that's it. That's what it needed to be. No matter how long I sat at that computer hoping that I could figure it out, it wouldn't happen until it needed the time to do the thing. That's the writer in me that's always like, let's give it the time it takes to have the time it takes. The journalist in me is like, if you give me a deadline, I'll have it figured out by the time there's a deadline. So, like, hey, comics are a periodical business. we got to hit these deadlines so that it stands when it's supposed to. It's like, all right, I'll solve it because it has to be solved. Because there's no choice. And here's the time you've allotted me to do it.
Yeah.
I'll figure it out. But like day to day, like I'll wake up at like 8 o'clock and, you know, get, you know, the kid ready for school and I'll sit down at the computer and I'll check my email. I'll check deadline. I'll, you know, a little bit of like Instagram and TikTok, social media stuff. If there's something that needs doing, they'll start doing it. If not, I'll like turn on my PlayStation 5 and like, hey, maybe I'll just spend, I don't know, half an hour on Destiny 2.
Research.
Yeah, or like Civilization Revolution, or like some game that I can pick up and put down without feeling compelled to stick around and do it. You know, I like that kind of I'm not going to say soul deadening numbing of it, but just the simple routine of like, I'm not invested in a story. I'm just kind of relaxing through emotion.
Yeah, you're clearing your brain too at the same time.
Yeah, like just ramping up, slightly engaging until we're ready to engage for real. I am by nature a evening writer and not a daytime writer unless I have to be. Because so much of my writing career has been writing when I'm not doing the day job, you know, so I'd like go to an office and work on a newspaper or magazine or whatever for the 8 or 9 or 10 hours of that day, come home, hang out with my family. Hey, it's 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock, 10:30, everybody's going to sleep. And then I would write from like 10:30 or 11 to like 1 o'clock in the morning. Wow. So left to my own devices, that's when most of the work gets done. And even still, even if I'm not on a show and not in a room, that is kind of when most of the work will get done, even though I'm kind of dicking around in my computer for most of the day anyway.
Interesting.
Some of that's research. Some of that is like, yeah, well, I can just kind of like take a look at this and refresh myself for this or whatever. But unless there's a hard deadline that needs to be hit, most of the good stuff comes after hours.
And you always write from home and not from like you don't go to a coffee shop or anything like that.
I used to a lot. Like I was a huge fan of the like being in a public space. I used to write a lot of that early work had gotten done in like a Barnes and Noble, like the little cafe over there because I like being surrounded by books and I like the gentle conversations that you would kind of hear. And I shifted to like a food court dude, which like lots of conversations, but also lots of space. Like that was also kind of nice. The pandemic sort of broke me of that because none of those were accessible to me anymore. And I got myself a little kind of office away from home simply because, you know, hey, we were homeschooling suddenly in a house with a developmentally challenged kid. And that is not a quiet process. And so it's like, all right, I got to go to this work. I got to go somewhere. And so I still have that space. Like I'm in that space now. Which is like the podcast studio / I need to be someplace that's not the house.
Yeah. Nice.
But yeah, like that's it. It's not, there's no arcaneness to it. There's no like, all right, I've got to get my eldritch scroll from the papyrus and goat on the hills of Parnassus. And here's my pen and ink plume. Like it's not that specific.
Is it safe to assume that you have more than one project going at any one time and that everything is in different stages?
Yeah, it is the job of being a working TV writer is the job of having 8 things happening all at once, in various stages. And some of them are not like actively writing on a thing. Some of them are like, well, we're doing the research to meet on that project. We're watching that movie, reading that book to meet on another project. We're writing a pitch for this project. We're prepping for this meeting on that project. It's 8 irons in the fire at all times, just always kind of tending them, hoping that one of them will spark. Because I also do, then I'm adding 2 more things to that, which is like, all right, well, Anansi Boys needs to be this, and this needs to be this, and like breaking that time off to make sure that all those mouths get fed.
Yeah. Did you have to learn to context switch and to be able to get your head in the right space to write the thing that was different than the other thing? Like, how did you manage that?
It's a lot of it, like journalism also helped a great deal with that, which is like, if you're an editor, if you're a writer, you can just be writing your story. But if you're an editor, you've got like 8 stories you're working on. It's here's this thing for this, here's this thing for that, here's this thing, this in another stage over here, and being able to like, just kind of bounce and slot in and get to work on a thing and kind of be able to contextualize yourself by the word environments that you're in. And so that ability to kind of hot swap in and out of stuff came incredibly handily. The thing that I found as I've gotten older is that it's taking longer for the gears to click in, that in my dotage, I'm going to be 50, I'm 52 now. So like when I'm like in my 30s, whatever, I can just put it in front of me and I can do it. It's no problem. But now like it's the time it takes for me to switch gears is longer.
Okay.
And so it's like, we can do 2 things tonight, between like 11 and 1. But there are days where it's just like this last week was a gauntlet of just like 5 different projects, all needing attention at different times and at different speeds, all of which had different story problems that needed to be solved. But like, it'll get done because it has to get done. I'm just now more mindful of, am I going to have a stroke than I was in my 30s?
Considering your busy schedule, so is doing this podcast part of your procrastination?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Shane and I really appreciate you guys tuning into our YouTube channel today. If you enjoyed this short conversation and would like to see the entire interview, then please head on over to our Substack, where you'll not only find all of our full-length interviews, but a ton of super interesting posts that we've created just for you guys. Link is in the description box below. So until next time, thanks for watching.